when your lifestyle contributes to a very unbalanced blood sugar level, it's going to lower your capacity for external stress. And a low capacity for external stress is why people relapse and become addicted in the first place. So, those of you listening to this, wherever you're listening to this, I decided to record the lecture portion of this somatic addiction circle. I never record these, but this topic felt really important and could help a lot of people that were unable to be here live. So, I'm doing that. And I'm going to turn the recording off when we go back into any kind of weaving with the live participants. Um, what we're really sitting with today is the correlation between supporting recovery from addiction by supporting blood sugar. So we're looking at the relationship between my blood sugar balance and my relapse, my blood sugar balance and my recovery, right? My blood sugar balance and my capacity for stress. And that's the most important part for me to start with. And I love that that last share was a great one because whenever I go to recovery centers or I work with people who are either very new in the recovery or for, 10, 20, 30 years, they've been abstinent or feel recovered from a certain addiction, sugar tends to be what takes the space. When someone stops smoking cigarettes, they start, sucking on hard candies or lollipops. This is at least in the older days. I'm not sure if that's exactly what's happening now. But I go to recovery centers or I'll go to spaces where people are even having meetings, like in AA and such. And I see lots of caffeine, lots of sugar, lots of candy, lots of sodas. And what the one participant just shared was, well, I stopped the worst of the stuff. So if I see a bag of gummy bears, I'm going to eat them. Like that's nothing compared to what I've done in the past. And I think about people I've worked with who were addicted to heroin or crack or meth or fentanyl. Gummy bears are nothing compared to that. So it's like if you had alcoholism, if you were addicted to marijuana, whatever it was, usually gummy bears, cookies, sugar, you're not really going to think of that as something that's harmful. And I'm not even going to call it harmful, but I think it's fascinating that it goes unexplored often, the correlation between our balance of blood sugar and why we might relapse. So we want to start by first understanding why we are addicted in the first place. I often will say addiction is the result of not knowing how to find safety in yourself. So your inner state, your inner body is just revved up with activation and adrenaline and constriction and pain, emotional and physical pain and discomfort. And then you come across something externally or someone externally or a substance or a TV show, whatever it is, something outside of you that temporarily changes that inner state. Maybe it slows things down a little bit. Maybe it speeds things up a little bit, depending if you're depressed, then something like cocaine or something like lots of coffee or something like really stimulating relationship awakens you and you feel alive. So it's not always the downers, it can be anything. But that external thing balances your inner system temporarily. You start to achieve a sensation of being somewhat balanced and centered. And then, of course, it throws you off depending on how potent it is. But my point is, the addiction results from looking outside of yourself for safety. Now, why does that happen? One word, capacity. These physical bodies have something called capacity, which is a body's ability to metabolize stress hormones, a body's ability to feel and experience the charge of panic or anxiety or big emotion or sensation and let it move through without getting stuck, without hindering you, without shutting you down. So when I say capacity is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about mental capacity to have willpower to understand addiction. I'm talking about a biological experience of metabolizing stress. It includes your liver, the health of your liver to even metabolize stress hormones that are freely floating in your blood. So to me, when we talk about recovery, we are talking about biology. This isn't just a mindset of I need to stop being addicted and have control over my, uncontrollable disease. It's more about how can my body be best supported to have much more flexibility in the face of stress. People don't relapse because they're relaxed. They relapse because something really stressful occurs and they don't know how to handle it, especially when you developed with a substance. If you discovered your addiction at a young age, I'm talking about like puberty, right? Your body developed with this other thing getting in between your relationship to your body and you and your body, rather, the relationship you have with it. And that's an important piece because it means you never really learned how to be with those big sensations inside of you. You never tended to or developed that capacity. So when you're abstaining and walking away from a harmful substance, your relapse comes in the face of stress. So, how can we support the body to be able to experience stress without toppling over and reflexively going to an addiction that you're used to that predictably can soothe you, right? We have to learn the relationship between nutrition and body, how nutrition can support the nervous system, how nutrition can support the adrenal glands, how nutrition can support the balance of your blood sugar, which greatly affects both your nervous system and your adrenals. And that's where I want to start with all of you right here. When your blood sugar dips or spikes either way, you will subsequently have an adrenal response. When you have an adrenal response, when there's a large amount of adrenaline floating around your bloodstream, you will go into a fight or flight response or a stress response. You'll feel stressed. You'll feel panicked. You'll feel constricted and overwhelmed. That's the feeling we report right before we relapse, right? The anxiety and stress and overwhelm builds, it doesn't settle. And in the face of it building, we break down and we go back to what we knew that could help us, back to what we knew that could support us, even though it could be harmful. It was the most supportive thing we found, or else we do something else, right? So if we understand that blood sugar can possibly be this kind of key, it can unlock the code of creating much more balance in your body because it doesn't rev up your nervous system or make excessive amounts of adrenaline, be produced by the adrenal glands. If your blood sugar is balanced, your nervous system is balanced, your adrenals are balanced, you're less likely to feel chronic stress. So this doesn't mean monitoring blood sugar levels. Someone brought that up, and I'm glad they did. It doesn't mean getting a monitor. It doesn't mean pricking your finger and taking your blood or getting those like $500 machines that stick on your arm. This is a somatic approach, so it's not a medical approach, which is fine. If you want to do the medical approach, go for it. If you have the money or the time or the desire, go for it. The somatic approach is one, learning the felt sense of what it feels like when your blood sugar is dipping. Getting to notice the difference between I'm in a bad mood or I'm depressed and I'm low blood sugar because they feel the exact same, right? And so starting to track your food, tracking what you're eating, noticing how long it's been in between meals, noticing what you're eating is going to start naturally balancing your blood sugar. And then you'll get the sense, the felt sense from those balancing foods of what it feels like to have balanced blood sugar compared to what it feels like when it's dropping. So this is an instinctive, intuitive, felt process. It's not a medical one. It's not one with a machine. It's not one with tests. It's one with just noticing, how does it feel when I'm stable? How does it feel when I'm not? Through the lens of nutrition, not just in life, but I'm just speaking nutrition here. So a couple things I'm gonna walk us through. One thing is when the internal stress that arises from blood sugar dropping, when that internal stress arises, that lowers your capacity for external stress. So if you're eating in such a way or your food habits are in such a way where your blood sugar is constantly dipping and or constantly spiking, so it's not nourishing and balancing, it's either diving up or diving down, your capacity for external stress is highly compromised because there's so much internal stress that's created when that's happening, right? So your body is doing so much work, it goes into survival mode. That's why we feel panicked. You know that feeling when you're hungry and your blood sugar crashes and you feel like you're going to have an anxiety attack and pass out? That's real. You're actually having a survival response because your body can die when blood sugar is too high or low. So it goes through all these internal mechanisms, many of which are fueled by adrenaline. That's why the adrenal glands are stimulated when this happens. And that creates an internal situation of stress as if you were going through real life crisis or threat. So without anything happening in your life, you're already experiencing a huge amount of overwhelm internally, just from your blood sugar levels fluctuating and not being in balance. So then when stress occurs, someone breaks up with you, someone dies, you lose your job. These are all the reasons I remember when I was with clients who were recovering, they would relapse. You don't have the capacity for the grief. or the pain or the shock or the disappointment or the embarrassment or the shame, whatever arises from the experience, you literally don't have the capacity to metabolize it because your body's already at capacity trying to find its balance from a lifestyle that imbalances the blood sugar. So just feel that for a moment as I say that. Just let that kind of connect in your body however it wants to. And I always love to remind people to lay back, let your head be supported by something, hug a pillow. If it starts to feel really intense, a pillow is a brilliant way to help the body ground and have some capacity for what it's learning and hearing. But physically feel right now what supports you as you hear this, because this can be really triggering information. You heard somebody say, like, don't take away my sugar. There's the immediate panic when you talk about food, especially when you're talking about sugar, of like, that's my joy. Don't touch my joy. Especially when you've gone through really intense struggles with addiction and you're finally out of that struggle. You're like, I've been through hell. I'm going to enjoy a candy bar. Like, I respect that. So don't think about losing anything right now. Just think about getting the conscious awareness and the somatic awareness of what it is I'm talking about. When your lifestyle contributes to a very unbalanced blood sugar level, it's going to lower your capacity for external stress. And a low capacity for external stress is why people relapse and become addicted in the first place. So you have a much greater chance at recovering from addiction and supporting other people in their recovery when you can understand some very simple tips and ways to balance blood sugar. And that's what I'm going to teach you. So I'm going to get right into those actually, and then we'll do a practice. So the first thing, is, as someone looked into their crystal ball and already foreshadowed, we'll call it, beans. And I'm gonna put beans and fiber together right now. So those of you that are like super bean adverse, Camille and I are always laughing because I say some things that are highly controversial, like politically controversial, like philosophically controversial. Nothing has been more controversial in my career than beans. The amount of like hate mail I've ever seen for beans, it like shocks me. So just to understand, when I'm talking about beans in this case, what I'm really focused on is fiber. And I'm bringing that in because you can get fiber from a lot of things. Now, beans have a highest amount of soluble fiber than any other food on the planet in terms of the amount of them. You can get a smaller amount of beans comparatively to anything else and get a huge dose of soluble fiber. That's important for what we're talking about because soluble fiber helps remove excess adrenaline from your gut. And when that adrenaline is removed from your gut, guess what? You feel more relaxed, you feel more grounded, you have more capacity for external stress because internal stress hormones have literally been detoxified like a sponge through your bowels from the soluble fiber. The amount that's been studied is half of a cup of beans with each meal. So I'm just going to throw that out first. So anyone that's willing to try, just start there. You don't have to change anything about your diet. Just when you eat a meal, even if a meal is a candy bar, have a half a cup of beans with your candy bar. You're going to see a huge shift in how your body responds to that candy bar. Why is that? Fiber slows down the release of glucose to the bloodstream. That's the brilliance of fiber. The higher the fiber in your meal, the slower your spike in blood sugar, which means your blood sugar stays balanced over a longer period of time. The less fiber you have in a meal, the more immediate release of glucose you get to your bloodstream. You have a spike, and then you have an insulin spike, which lowers your blood sugar, and then you have an adrenaline spike to bring the blood sugar right back up. So within 45 to 90 minutes, you go through this whole inner turmoil of sudden spike to blood sugar, sudden spike to pancreas, sudden spike to adrenal glands. It's extremely exhausting. It's only been 45 minutes. It's only been the first hour of your day, depending on what you're eating or not eating. How do you expect someone who is withdrawing and just coming out of a highly, highly addictive relationship to a substance to be able to manage that if their inner state is so stressed out just from the first hour of waking up? You can't expect that for yourself or other people. It's why recovery can be so hard. Even recovery from a relationship, I know this is an addiction circle, but recovering from anything that you had found safety in that is no longer there for you, someone you love who passed away, anything, a job, everything we went through in COVID, so many things. How do you handle those losses and those shocks when your inner state is already at capacity because of the stress hormones and the stressful condition caused by unbalanced blood sugar levels, right? So the most easiest thing to start with is adding fiber to your meals. Even if it's a spoonful of beans, you're going to add fiber to your meal. The other option is really high fiber bread. You can look up whole grain bread that's high in fiber. You can just look at the back of it and see if it's 5 grams or more of fiber. That's a brilliant addition to what you're eating. Whole grains are high in fiber, and any kind of vegetable is going to be very high in fiber. So if you're having vegetables, a whole grain bread that's high fiber, or beans with your meals, you're slowing down the release of sugar to your bloodstream. That's an amazing first start right there. Okay. So that's part one. Hey, my friends. I created a space that is affordable, accessible, and anyone is allowed to join anytime, and it's called the Library Membership. The Library Membership is an online private platform that hosts dozens of my webinars, my somatic practices, private mini lectures, and movement practices. There's also a monthly sound healing, and you'll be invited to a weekly Tuesday live mini practice with me and other participants. You'll also be invited to be a live audience member in our monthly HLN team podcast recordings, where you'll take place in the Q&A that happens off air after the episode is filmed. For more information on this membership, click on the link below, or go to holisticlifenavigation.com and click on membership and then library. You can join right now, and you can cancel or pause your subscription at any time. I look forward to seeing you in there. Part 2, enter nuts. Enter nut butter. Enter sunflower seed butter for my friends that can't do peanuts, okay? Sunflower seed butter, some seeds, pumpkin seeds, pepitas, nuts. These are incredibly nutrient-dense snacks that are rich in fat, rich in minerals. Minerals help balance your blood sugar, and rich in protein. Protein, fat, and fiber are the brilliant trio for balancing the release of blood sugar, slowing the release of glucose. So if you're having a snack, if you're having a dessert, if you're eating fruit, if you're eating something that you know is sweet, if you're like, I really want a soda, have a handful of nuts before. It's that simple. Eat a handful of nuts, have a spoonful or two of nut butter. My favorite dessert is some kind of like almond butter on celery. I know you're like, dessert? I also like actual dessert too. I'm not crazy, but I do enjoy that as a snack. And so having a high fat snack like guacamole, hummus, nut butters with a vegetable, an incredible way to balance your blood sugar. So that's another piece. And then another part just with that piece, that snack, is having it in between meals. If you eat nuts or nut butter with some kind of vegetable 2 hours after a meal, you're going to successfully keep balancing your blood sugar levels. You're going to find yourself crashing less. You're going to find your emotions to be much, much less erratic. And again, it's going to support you in your recovery. Anything you want to add, Camille, before I say anything else?
I want to reiterate that last point. Support you in your recovery. This is not one quick yeah, I think you say that right. One quick fix, but just noticing this is a lever that I can pull. This is something in an arsenal or like a deck of cards, one thing that I can do. We are not saying do this and everything, oh, miraculously everything will just fall into place. But this is something, one thing I can play with. And like Luis was talking about, we can actually notice it in our own bodies. Like many of you are probably familiar with the term hangry, being hungry and angry. You've experienced that in your own body. Well, what's one way I can stop being hangry? I can check in with when I need to eat. Now, does this mean I'm never going to be angry again? No, but I can at least minimize the times when I experience anger simply due to not having a meal or being malnourished or having low blood sugar.
And I like that you brought in the hangry because so many people use that. It's like a pop culture term, like I'm hangry. That's what we're talking about here. It's like your stress hormones are so high because your blood sugar is so low that your adrenals have to work overtime. Why? Because the adrenals help excavate stored sugar from the muscles when your blood sugar goes low. So your adrenal glands have to turn on. Your fight or flight response has to kick in when your blood sugar dips. And that's why we feel angry and frustrated and irritable because we're actually being manipulated by our stress hormones because we have a low blood sugar, right? Very important. Two more things, just tips that you can start adding in to start balancing your blood sugar and then feeling the sensational experience. You don't have to test it or monitor it. You just notice it in your body. You notice the clarity. Liquid sugar. You don't have to think about getting rid of sugar. Consider getting rid of or eliminating or reducing liquid sugar. So that's like fruit juices, that's soft drinks, that's hard candies, liquid sugar, sugar that's not bound to any other nutrient. That sugar within seconds, literally when it touches your cheek, starts to raise your blood sugar levels. So it's the most unstable thing for your blood sugar. And if we're understanding the correlation between blood sugar and capacity for stress, liquid sugar annihilates your capacity for stress. And we relapse because of a low capacity for stress. The more capacity you have for stress in life, the less you even require an addictive substance. It's why I say the addiction becomes obsolete because you no longer need it. That's important to understand. That's different from willpower. So we can nurture that, right? Just by reducing the foods that quickly spike our blood sugar levels and put us in that state of imbalance. And liquid sugars are hardcore with that. So simple things like you can have like yogurt is a great example of like a sweet treat that's bound to fat and protein. So it'll have a much slower release, even though later on it can have a bigger one because of dairy. It's still a really good start. Um, Candy bars, like a Snickers bar would be much, much better than a fruit juice, shockingly, in terms of blood sugar levels because of how it releases based on the fat and a little bit of protein you have in the almonds in there. Okay. Now, if you want to do it in a way that I would, put my personal stamp of approval on, I would say look on the back of any baked good or any kind of food that's like a sweet treat that you love and see how much you have to eat to get 8 grams of sugar. If you can keep it at 8 grams or less, you can enjoy nearly any dessert without compromising the balance of your blood sugar. The moment you take in anything over 8 grams, you immediately have a blood sugar spike because all the blood in your body, if you drained it all out of your body and measured it, you'd have about 4 to 7 grams of sugar. That's all your body can handle. So if you have something that has a teaspoon of sugar, which is 8 grams or more, you start getting to that threshold. It is very easy to get 5 to 6 teaspoons of sugar in one candy bar, in one soda, in one fruit juice. So think about the 8 gram rule. It completely saved me when I was doing this because I could still enjoy things. I would look at my favorite cookie and I would see it had 20 grams of sugar. So I would have a third of it and I would enjoy it. And then I'd have a third of it the next day, or I'd have a third of it with dinner. Eating sugar and desserts after you eat your meal is another secret here. Slowly will release the sugar because there's all this fat and protein and fiber from your meal before you had the dessert compared to I'm going to have a cookie as the snack before my meal, or I'm going to have the cookie as breakfast or as dinner. So, really simple things you can start playing with, whether you're having 8 grams or less, whether you're having a whole candy bar after you had a full meal, right? Whether you're just going to not do liquid sugar, but you're going to have as much, sugar bound to solids as you want. These are all great starts just to begin noticing how it feels in your body when you're shifting to different habits that don't have such a quick spike. Okay. The final thing I'm going to say, and this is, I think it's tended to be really easy, but it depends on your body, how your body feels. Once you have a dessert, once you eat something that's really rich, when you have something that you know is really sweet or sugary, whether it's after a meal or on its own, walking for 20 minutes will greatly reduce the spike to your blood sugar because the movement of your muscles acts like a sponge and it pulls the glucose out of your blood that's being increased from the dessert. So let's say I have a candy bar, like I have dinner, have a delicious candy bar, and then I go for a 20-minute walk. Not a run, not a hike, just a walk. The movement of my muscles, vacuuming the house and cleaning, washing dishes. There's been so many studies on very simple things you can do that move your muscles for 20 minutes after dessert that will greatly decrease the amount of glucose in your bloodstream. right? Which will prevent having a big spike in your adrenal glands. It's not the sugar itself, it's the spike in the adrenals that then creates the irritation and the low capacity for external stress. We can prevent adrenal spikes with what we eat. We cannot prevent adrenal spikes from what happens in our life. That's supposed to happen. But we can prevent adrenal spikes from our nutrition. It's 100% preventable. You just have to learn the nutrition behind it. And I'm teaching you plenty here. Everything I just taught you, you could take your time over the course of many months and just integrate one thing each month very slowly. And you'll start feeling a really, really big difference. And then you can scour through all the nutrition uh, program, or I should say podcasts I have already, and just even take from those and even learn more. I'm currently doing a nutrition program. It's closed for registration, but we're going to do one next year as well. So if you sign up on my newsletter, Evan, can you put the newsletter link in the chat? If you sign up on the newsletter, you'll get information when I do those kind of programs um, next year. I want to go into a piece that came up several times in the shares, and it always comes up, and then I'm going to close and take some comments. Um, Interrupting a craving. So when we're thinking of, notice how besides talking about the liquid sugars, my centering here is not on sugar itself. It's on the blood sugar of the body and how we can change how fast glucose goes into the blood. So it's not simply about giving up sugar. That's like the obvious. You don't have to give up sugar. You can slow the release and all these other things I gave you. Either way, interrupting the craving for sweets is something we want to play with, not eliminating sweets, interrupting the craving. So I'm going to walk you all through right now. Let's all imagine our just favorite sweet craving right now. Your favorite sweet, even if you're not craving it, just like that thing you love, the thing you wish you could eat, or the thing you do eat all the time, whatever it is. And I want you to take a pillow and put it over your belly and really let your body be supported. Let your head be held, whether you have to hold it in your hands or you put it against a wall or you lay down on the floor. Let your head be held so your neck doesn't have to hold it up. And take your hand over your chest and your other hand over your belly when you have a pillow there. Yeah. And give it a little squeeze. And I just want you to notice as you sit here, you're thinking of the thing, you're not eating it, tracking the body. What part of you is wanting this? Where do you feel the sensations or the emotions or the desires for it in your body? And see what it's like just to settle into that for a moment. Just to feel where that lives. And not to say you're not going to eat this, but to say right now we're just pausing for a minute so I can get to know what's in my body, what drives me to eat it, what needs are there, what emotions arise, what sensation is there that the sugar or the craving, temporarily gives you space from or a break from or suppresses. Just know what's in my body right now that reaches for this. And then you can ask this feeling in your body. You can literally ask it, like, what else could you use to support you? Is there something else that could support you? So, for example, I've had people that say, oh, it just feels like joy. I just want joy. And you can ask, okay, where else do I get joy? Oh, you really enjoy talking to your friend on the phone. Okay, call them instead. Or I get comfort. Where else do I get comfort? Oh, I love cuddling my cat. Go cuddle your cat instead. So it's not for certain. Like when I say instead, I don't mean and then don't have the ice cream if it's ice cream. I'm saying interrupt your immediate reflex, which is to go straight to this thing. Interrupt it by feeling where your body is, what's coming up, what the need is, where else you meet that need in your life, and then practice even for a minute getting that need met elsewhere. Watching a funny thing on TV, calling a friend, getting a hug, going for a walk, eating an apple instead of a sundae if you're wanting just something sweet. Like playing with interrupting it and then checking, do I still want it after all that? Do I still want the ice cream? And if you do, go have the ice cream. But see what it's like to eat the ice cream after checking in with your body, after interrupting it for a few minutes, after settling into yourself and holding yourself, because we tend to go for the craving. And by doing so, we abandon the part of us that actually needs our attention. So it's not about doing away with these foods to balance your blood sugar to support your recovery. It's about having a new relationship to them, right? So then your body can start settling when it has a craving. So you can understand what the craving is showing you need. And then you can decide consciously from there how you're going to get the need met. Camille, do you want to add to that?
Um, I just want to acknowledge how this practice can seem really simple, but it's really profound. And it can also be a lot to be with. Like, this is the reason we are going to these things or these behaviors or whatever it may be, because there's something underlying it. There's something that this behavior, this food allows us to dissociate from or to numb from. And we are slowly, if y'all know me, one of my favorite words, we are titrating into being with that sensation. And so I really appreciate it with what I think River, you said at the beginning, like, I know, just come back into my body. And so yes, we can know that. Yes, we are pausing to do this. But we encourage you to do it with curiosity, not judgment, and not with the intent of not doing the thing or not eating the thing. You may well, in fact, still eat the thing, do the thing, consume the thing, but we are titrating into being with that underlying sensation.
That's right. Thank you, Camille. And now I'm going to turn the recording off. So those of you listening to this was our bi-monthly somatic addiction circle. You can join every other month absolutely for free. It's usually unrecorded. I wanted to record the lecture portion. I'm going to turn this off now so I can hear some feedback and weaving from those live participants. Ooh. That's the end of today's episode. Now let's take a moment to notice where we feel the episode in our bodies. Close your eyes. Take a breath. And let whatever wants to come up, come up. And remember, those sensations hold the wisdom that we're looking for. If you want to go deeper, visit holisticlifenavigation.com.